I went through a lot. Like, I don't think that I can be a mother to a child that's not biologically connected to me. That wasn't my dream. That wasn't my vision. It really took a lot for me to be okay with being a non-bio mom. But just know that once that baby is in your arms, nothing matters. It doesn't matter. That's your baby.
Family building is supposed to be easy, and it can be a shock when it's not. The roller coaster ride of infertility can be a mix of emotions and conflicting advice along the way. As a reproductive endocrinologist and former fertility patient, I not only help patients build families every day, but I remember what the ride was like for me. Hang on tight as we learn together from experts and share stories from infertility warriors with compassion. I'm your host, Dr. Lora Shahine, and this is Baby or Bust. There are many different ways to build a family. And when you're in the LGBTQ plus community and thinking about the different paths to being parents, there's a lot to navigate. Today, we welcome the creators and authors of the podcast and book, If These Ovaries Could Talk, Jaimie, Kelton, and Robin Hopkins. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
We are so happy to be invited anywhere. It's really just the truth.
I help people build all types of families. I help so many lesbians build families.
Who you calling a lesbian? No, I'm just kidding.
But my question is this have to be normalized? Like, I am helping so many people build families in this way. My kids have friends in their school with 2 moms and 2 dads. And I kind of feel like it is normal, but I'm sure that it's not for a lot of people. And I just want to know more about your passion and what you guys are doing.
Well, I think you're right. In our worlds, it's very normal. And it's hard for us to imagine other worlds it not being normal in. But I think that's the entire point. And I think that's why we're so passionate.
You know, we get email after email after email from people saying that they feel alone in the process. So you might be like a lesbian in, Nebraska. And while it is completely normal to want to make a family, you don't see other representation around you that looks like you, that's on TV, or even just know how to go about it. And that was part of the reason that, Jaimie came up with the idea for the podcast and why we built it is because of that. We need representation. So it's not just normalization, it's representation. And then I think along the way, what we really realized is it became a celebration. No one has ever asked us that question. And I love that you asked it because it gets to the heart of how important it is that these stories are out there.
And I think it's dramatically changed. And you guys really hit on this in a little bit in the first part of your book, where so many gay couples just never imagined themselves as having kids. Almost like a generation ago when you came out, it was scary to talk to your parents about it because their first assumption was they weren't going to be grandparents. If you're gay, you can't have kids.
And that you would have an unhappy life. That was also an assumption, too.
Even since starting our podcast 3 years ago, the fertility world has changed. There's still folks who say they didn't think that this would be a path for them. They didn't think that they would ever become a parent. Even young kids, 20-something-year-olds, starting the process of this LGBTQ family making. We still hear it from them that they never thought that this was something they could have.
Or who just assume that it's possible, which I think is a nice transition or progression is really a better word from where we've come. That they're just like, of course I can have kids. I can have my avocado toast. I probably can't afford a house and a baby, but I can have kids.
There's so much that has changed that has allowed that. So Robin, you were sharing that Mary, your wife, was just not even imagining a family until you kind of brought it up and you opened up this dream for her and sort of thought about different ways to do it. So even you kind of in your own relationship thought about it differently.
Yeah. And I wonder if she would call it a dream today, Jaimie, when we have a 10 and a 12-year-old. I doubt she would. But yeah, she's a little bit older than me. And she used to say that she didn't know she was gay, but she just thought she'd grow up to be divorced like Mary Tyler Moore because she couldn't see herself with a man. And she didn't see anything else for her in the media. There was nothing else she could even see for. So she just figured she'd be divorced. And then when we got together, she just never thought she could be a parent. And when I asked her, when I said, did you want to be a parent? She was just like, her first thought was like, can I be a parent? And she had to like go off and like do soul searching and try to figure it out. And in typical Mary fashion, she came back and said, well, okay, if I could, yes, I would want to.
Yeah. And there's so much that has changed. Like the legalization of gay marriage is huge because I remember counseling my patients before that if they had kids, they really needed to think about adoption. Like if you didn't have a genetic connection to the child, you would be okay in the state of Washington, which is where I practice. But if you went to Disney World in Florida and something happened to the genetic parent and you didn't have a marriage license, you had to like actually really think about that. And one of the little checklists was meeting with a reproductive lawyer before you even chose sperm. And that's dramatically changed.
You still do have to get that second parent adoption or parentage order.
It's second parent adoption light.
Yes. And it seems like that will hold up. Second parent adoption across the board is what every lawyer we talk to still strongly recommends for our families.
Because you don't know if you're going to travel out of the country. You don't know if you're going to go to a state that doesn't like the gays. It's you got to be careful.
Well, also insurance has changed. So it used to be you might have fertility benefits, but only if you were infertile. And infertile meant that you were trying for 12 months. And people who were gay were excluded from that because if you're a lesbian, you don't have sperm, you can't try. It just like there are these hoops that people had to get around that weren't even an option.
I mean, it's point blank discrimination.
Yeah, it's reproductive discrimination.
What we've learned time and time again in interviews, it's LGBTQ people who are actually trying to make babies who are making these changes happen, who are fighting the institutions and fighting the system to force them to be more inclusive. So there's that too. I would love it if it was actually, the higher up.
There are some companies though, Jaime, don't you think? There are some companies that it becomes like a benefit that they can tout on their Indeed, on their links that they can say like, we're inclusive and we offer this. And especially tech companies are leading the way on that.
I'm in Seattle where there's Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Facebook, and there is this coverage. And so I'm seeing so many people that are able to take advantage of these benefits. But I do need to be reminded that is absolutely not the case everywhere.
Yeah. Well, most people we talk to don't have coverage.
Or they have partial coverage, or like I had partial coverage. It's company specific. But we talked to somebody which was really cool, who was like, this was like a millennial who was in the planning stages. And she was planning on getting a job at Starbucks because she knew they had coverage so that she could be the one to carry. And I was like, that is some forward thinking shit right there.
We made progress with some insurance, but it's not perfect. But I think you guys hit on something that is really been a significant progress, which is representation, right? Like I'd never seen a lesbian couple have kids until Rosie O'Donnell or Melissa Etheridge. And I kind of remember that. And just like you guys are now a part of that representation. And can you think of other couples that, were influential to you? Like you saw have a family and was like, oh, I can do that.
I mean, those were the two for me.
In youth, yes. I mean, Rosie and Melissa, those are the ones that we mentioned in our book as being the representation we saw. Now there are more. There are so many more.
Now there's just thousands, and it's amazing. And so many people, like, we just don't even know about it. It's like nice to see athletes coming into the ring. That was a horrible sentence there, but I said it.
So now you've got this representation. You know that there's ways to do it. But you're thinking to yourself, okay, I know that I want to have a family. All I'm really lacking is sperm. But there's so many different ways to do it. Like, of course, there's adoption, right? But anybody that says the words just and adopt in the same sentence need to get a reality check because it takes time and it's extremely expensive. And I know a lot of my patients hear that all the time. Like, oh, why are you doing this, or this?
And it can come with some grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you're done and once the decision is made and once you have that child, it's completely different story. But getting to that point, it can come with grief.
How did you guys decide which road was right for you?
I just want to say, like, not all LGBTQ couples, not all lesbian couples think of themselves as having 4 ovaries. And for some folks in the relationship, for one of them, getting pregnant or using their ovaries might be out of the question.
We talked to one couple, the one partner who was trying, she went by she, but she was non-binary. And she was trying because the other partner had a lot of problems. And she got a lot of microaggressions at the clinic that they were at, toward her. Like, the staff wouldn't look at her. They would only look at the partner. They would call her by, when they would call a female sounding name, they wouldn't look at her because she presented non-binary. And I think a lot of times, like, people in our community may not want to put themselves in that position. I mean, that's fair to say, Jaimie?
Yes. And for some folks in our community, at the end of the day, if your partner's not getting pregnant and you have the body parts to do it and you're open to it and getting yourself to do that, they still might not be happy being in the position of being the carrier in using their body to create the child. Being sensitive to that is super important, especially to someone like that who is really, really overcoming a lot to even go through this process because they want a baby so bad, because they want to be a parent so bad.
The other thing too, and I think that the heterosexual community, or like the other community, I would say from our community.
Are you othering them? What are you doing?
I did that on purpose. It was fun. They don't often understand that for us, like, let's take me and Mary, for instance, like, we had no presenting issues. I was showing up to this clinic simply because we were missing a part. And yet our doctor completely, and this is in New York, in like a hub, spoke to us as if I needed a whole tutorial on the whole thing. And I understand that, but he didn't have any language or use any language to be like, I understand that you two have a path that you want to go down. Like, I wanted to go in and do what we wanted to do. I wasn't having any problems. I mean, I got pregnant the very first time. There needs to be some training that, like, when you're speaking to folks in the LGBTQ community, we're just coming at it from a different place and we're not there yet. But we do have like a certain set of concerns, like, because we're spending $2,000 a month on sperm. So we just have a different set of concerns, and it would just be awesome, instead of just putting a rainbow on the website, if there was a little bit of training about, like, hey, when you deal with folks in the LGBTQ community, think about this, or talk to them in this way, or be aware or sensitive of these things. Like, I just think that'd be super helpful.
Our community is sensitive, and sometimes it seems like we are overly sensitive, but you have to realize the history and what has brought us to the place of sensitivity. A lot of us have been through a lot, and I'm not talking about me and Robin. Like, we have an easy time of it so far. I don't know.
You better knock some wood, Jaimie. You better knock some wood.
Many folks in our community have been through some serious insensitivity, to say it kindly. And just to be aware of that and to not assume.
I did want to talk at some point about kind of making that transition from just being a couple that the only reason you're in the clinic is because you need sperm to, well, it's actually not working and maybe there is a fertility issue, and how much that sucks, right?
That's Jaimie.
Yeah, I've been there.
So as a fertility doctor, when I have a lesbian couple coming in to talk about family building options, I get excited because there are so many options. And Robin, I want to hear about your story about how you decided whether you're going to do IUIs or IVF and the options that are there for you.
Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to have a baby. I just thought I was going to. I always wanted to be a parent. Mary was sort of like, didn't. But then when we did have that little exploration conversation, she said, yeah, I would maybe like to try. Truth be told, I mean, we thought we were like creating science. Like, we didn't know it was called reciprocal IVF. We just thought, oh, look at us. We'll take my eggs, because I'm the younger one, and we'll put it in Mary's hopper. And we were like, we have an insurance. It could do that old insurance switcheroo where I could do one free IVF and then could do another one on the next thing. And then, hopefully we'll get pregnant. But it was going to cost a lot of money. I mean, even with insurance, like, the guy was like, oh, it's either going to be $6,000 or $26,000. And I was like, that's a big discrepancy there. And I need to know. And so we went down the path of of that, and we did all the checklist, and we met with the doctors. Everybody's parts were clear and good to go, and we ordered sperm. We had like 10 different prescription forms laid out on the table. We were supposed to call them in to start like cycling or whatever the appropriate term is, like to get things moving. And we had 40% chance of it working and sticking. And we were like, that's going to wipe out our savings. And we could do it one time. And there's a easier, free uterus over here that is ready. Like, and in that moment, Mary, it was a really nice moment. And she sort of just said, I think I was afraid I would feel left out because she would have been the non-bio parent. Like she would have no genetic tie to our kids. And she said, but I don't feel that way anymore. And so the very next day we called up and said, we're flipping this on its head. And now we're just stick it in there with me.
There's two kind of basic options, right? You can do donor sperm intrauterine insemination where you're literally just putting sperm in, turkey baster, right? Or one way that both women can sort of share in the biology of this baby making is, Robin, you are going to go through IVF, get your eggs, fertilize them with donor sperm, and then take that embryo and put it into Mary.
Correct.
So that everybody's participating. And that's a beautiful way for everybody to participate, but it's so much more complicated and can be costly and it's more invasive. But there are couples that decide to do that or the simple way. And it's just fascinating to see how you made that decision.
When we went to have a second, we couldn't get the same sperm. And we were like moving hell on earth and heaven on earth or whatever that phrase is to try to get the same donor. And we couldn't. And there was, again, that same light bulb moment where Mary said, I'm not genetically tied to our daughter, Maxine, she said, and I am 100% connected and she's my child. And I was so worried that they wouldn't be full siblings, that they wouldn't be fully connected because they would have different donors. And we were like, oh my God, that's so stupid. Like, what am I doing? And they have different donors. You would never know that they're not 100% genetically connected. We are 100% a family. Like, who cares? We're family. Takes you a minute to get there, but Jaimie will tell you.
I was very, very worried about being the non-bio mom. It was a huge fear for me. And in the way we made our family, I was definitely going to be non-bio mom to at least one of our kids. And that was very hard for me.
So non-bio means not biologically connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little term we use.
We got a glossary in the back of our book just for this very reason.
That was a real concern for you. And tell me a little bit more about how things happen and you move forward.
I always knew, just like Robin, I always knew I was going to be a mom. It was never a question. When I first met my wife, she didn't show much inclination to wanting to be pregnant. So I always thought it would be me. I would carry however many kids we had. I was going to be biologically connected. That's how we were going to do this. And that didn't happen. Right after we got married, my wife decided she wanted to carry a child. And so I had to come to like a serious reckoning. I went through a lot. Like, I don't think that I can be a mother to a child that's not biologically connected to me. That wasn't my dream. That wasn't my vision. It was very hard for me to wrap my head around it. And I have to say, I didn't wrap my head around it throughout her entire pregnancy. I was scared the whole time up until we had our daughter. Now I look back and think you were so silly, but it really took a lot for me to be okay with being a non-bio mom. It took so much, but just know that once that baby is in your arms, nothing matters. It doesn't matter. That's your baby. Mm-hmm. It's your baby. Mm-hmm. Although I did get kind of competitive with my wife after the baby came for like how much time I had with the baby, like how many feedings I do. Like I was a little competitive about it. I want to make sure that, she liked us both the same, but I don't think that fear ever goes away for somebody like me who's high anxiety. Like, I want to make sure that I am as much a part of my daughter's life as my wife is, who shares the biological connection.
I think that's parenting in general too, though, don't you think? Like that fear of connection before you have a baby. You don't know if you're going to connect to an infant. I think you hear that from other folks too. I do think it's heightened for the non-bio situation in our situations, but you got to be nimble in your planning. Like, it doesn't always go exactly how you want, and like you said, that is a moment where we're lucky when sometimes, like, especially if it's two people with uterus and uteri, whatever that is, the appropriate uteruses, like we might be able to be more flexible, but if you're two men, you might have one egg donor and then you have to switch a donor. It's like, we just have to be really flexible in our planning. Like, we can't get too married to an idea because it just doesn't look like that.
My narrative was I was going to take out my IUD and get pregnant right away. And infertility and IVF later, I have my family, but that was definitely not my plan. And you have great stories about, planning for reciprocal IVF and then moving to a simpler option that was right, and Mary reconciling, connecting with your kids. And Jaimie, your whole story about, your wife doing IVF and getting pregnant with her first try, and then it's sort of your turn, and what a roller coaster ride. And so you can't get wedded to this narrative, and being flexible and nimble is the whole thing about building a family and even being a parent.
Like, my kids are 10 and 12 and Jamie's kids are 7 and 4, I believe.
Even worse.
And, and we're often talking to people who either are pregnant or trying to get pregnant or just have a baby. And it's so funny. We're always like the old ladies in the corner going, don't worry about that. None of that's important. Just get the baby. It's all the rest of it's what you got to be worried about.
Well, we talk to so many couples who try to plan the time of the year that they get pregnant.
It'll be for my job. And Jaimie and I are like laughing. We're like laughing in their face. I'm like, your job is second.
And
everything's second. You can't. It's going to happen when it's going to happen.
Lesson number 1.
When you're trying to get started as a lesbian couple, you're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to go first, or is someone going to carry, etc. And then you got to find the sperm. And you guys had really interesting insight and stories into being very certain about what you were going to do. Family members that wanted you to use a brother, and you're like, the notebooks with like the color-coded traits that you were looking for. And then you're like, whatever, this is going to be fine. I want to hear more about the donor sperm selection, because there's just so many great stories there.
We have lovingly coined the donor selection as the search for Superman, because that is what happens to us LGBTQ folks when we start shopping sperm or egg donors or what have you. We start nitpicking on the craziest, most insane, ridiculous things that you would never, ever, ever worry about in
your partner.
Yeah. Like what, Robin? Like,
I kicked someone out for eczema, or I was about to. And then I was like, what, am I insane? I was like,
what am I, an animal?
Yeah, what am I, an animal? We talked about if we made a baby together, and it was my alcoholic genes and her mom died of cancer in her 60s, I would have thrown that donor out so fast.
We would all have been thrown away.
But if Mary and I could have made a baby together, there's nothing that would have stopped me from doing that.
Wouldn't have mattered. I came to the same realization too, because we were thinking of using a known donor, a friend of ours, actually. And we went back and forth. And we decided to use a sperm donor from a sperm bank because we had friends who had gone before us who had done the same thing. We kicked somebody out because they had acne as a kid.
Like, oh my gosh, I would have been out.
Everybody would be out. All of a sudden it becomes this, you have to have the perfect specimen. And we came to the same realization when we were out to eat and we're talking it through. And we said, if we had used our friend, he doesn't have anything we're looking for. Nothing. And also he drinks too much. And I'll love you if you're listening to this. But also, like, there's some, stuff. But it wouldn't have mattered because we love him.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to realize is whatever baby you get, you're going to love that baby no matter what. And it's just so funny that Robin and I both came to the same realization in our own ways.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our families come to this realization after painstaking binders and color coding.
And flights to Colombia. That story, please share. Thank you.
After having Maxine, like, I'm an idiot. Like, I don't give a crap. I did not enjoy being pregnant. I know women aren't supposed to say that. I did not like it. Jaimie didn't like it either. I don't want to.
Neither did I. Wait, I don't know why you outed me.
Because I don't want to be alone out here on this diving board.
I was right there with you. I was about to say it.
You had my back. I did not like it. And around 7 months, I was like, let's just sell the extra sperm back. Let's sell it back because we're going to adopt our second kid. I knew we were going to have two. I was like, this is like, that's what we're going to do. And the second I had Maxine, and I was also one of those lucky people who, I mean, like 3 sets of pushes and she was out. Like, she's like, just popped right out of there.
I don't know why you do that.
Because it's what it felt like, Jaimie. It literally felt like that.
Not okay.
It felt like that. When a baby came out my vagina, it felt like,
oh my God. I don't know. I had an emergency C-section. I don't know that feeling.
and I'm holding her gorgeous little angelic, beautiful face. And I immediately did that thing that women have been doing for millions and millions of years. I said, that wasn't so bad. And I was like, I guess I could do it again. And then I dumbly thought, oh, we'll just call and get more sperm. Well, Mr. 142297 was out of the program and he was retired.
That's not his real number.
It's not his real number. It's fake. Don't look that up. And I think they could tell by the way I was like vamping 14704. So that's when I joined a sibling board,
a donor sibling board
through the bank for they'll sign you up if you have a reported baby, they put you on it. And then if anybody else has any and they signed up, you meet them. And someone was like, do that and see if anyone has any sperm. And there was this one lady in Colombia, Moga, who had 1 vial. And we tried to figure out getting it shipped to New York. And it was like, I'm literally in an open cubicle desk, going, well, can we ship the sperm through customs? And it was like, I'm trying to be hushed about it. And then I was like, who cares at this point? And the woman said, why don't we just bring the mountain to Muhammad? And she was like, come here. And I went down there and she gave me the vial of sperm and it didn't work. And then another lady in Seattle, another donor sibling mom, sent me a vial and that didn't work. And guess what? We picked a new donor and we didn't labor. There was no notebooks like the beginning. We just looked through and we were like, yes, yes, yes. He sounds normal. Okay, we bought it. I was pregnant the next time. And by the way, if we had not done that, I would not have Henry. But it's like, that was how it was supposed to happen. And I think we get to have those realizations because of the way we make our families.
There's this shift that sometimes happen in this process when it's whatever IUI and it hasn't worked or whatever embryo transfer and it hasn't worked, and you kind of shift over into the infertility realm. And Jaimie, I just really want to hear your story and a little bit about how you navigated that shift.
My wife, she went first because she was older. We started with IUI. We actually did about 4 rounds of IUI. And literally in the middle of the 5th cycle, he said, you know what? I think we should switch to IVF. So we switched mid-cycle, like her feet were in the stirrups, and then realized, oh shit, insurance doesn't cover that. But we didn't know that until it was too late. So that happened. But we got a baby from it, so it was okay. And so when we went back to do me, we came at it with that same fun energy, like, this is going to be great. We went back to the same doctor. We talked through our options because we only had 2 vials of our donor left. And so, he said, you know what? I recommend you go straight to IVF. You're young. You look good. Let's just do IVF right away because they did 2 rounds per cycle. So that was going to be all of the sperm left. We said, yeah, let's do this. Let's get me pregnant. And it was going to be so easy and so fun. That didn't work.
But the narrative is that's what you had to do for your wife. And so that's all you have to do for you. Like, it's so easy that we do that.
Exactly. It was so easy. And she was 42 when she got pregnant. And I was, at this point, I'm like 37.
A baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't look like I'm still geriatric in medical terms, but like he didn't see any red flags, nothing. Yeah, we'll get you pregnant. Let's do it. Let's do this IVF. Let's get going. And it didn't work. And then another transfer happened. That didn't work. We had to get more sperm. We had to buy our donor out of retirement. He came back to donate for us because there was already a sibling born to this donor. So they allow that. You have to buy all of the vials up that he produces, that they put on the market. That's like the agreement. And then we started trying with IUIs. I mean, long story short, 3 years later, multiple IVFs, like over 20 IUIs, still not pregnant. And I'm not somebody who wallows in misery. And I am not somebody who talks about what I'm going through with anyone, really. Like, I don't want to talk about it. It's mine. I like to hold on to whatever's going on inside me, which doesn't help when you're going through something very, very deep and very, very heavy. And what I like to do, I just like to hear other people's stories that are similar to mine. That helps me. It doesn't help me to talk about it. It helps me to hear other people talk about it. But I couldn't find my story anywhere. I couldn't find a lesbian infertility story in any place I searched. Not in the news, not on podcasts, not in books, nothing. And that's why I thought somebody needs to make this podcast. And that's why I eventually approached Robin and said, yo, you need to make this podcast with me because I don't know how to do any of this. For me, like, there's no switch. There's no switch that happens. It's the pain you feel every time you go back into that doctor's office. It's that embarrassment you feel every time you walk back in front of that receptionist and she says, oh, hey again. That's the worst feeling in the world. Yeah, I'm back. Here I am. It starts to grate on you and it starts to grate on you. And I didn't have an outlet for it. And I didn't talk to anybody about it. And I didn't even let on to myself how much it hurt. And I think that's how I got through it, I guess. I also knew the whole time I was going to get pregnant. I remember my mother having phone conversations with me. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What's your plan B? There is no plan B. I'm going to get pregnant. There's no plan B. And there was no other option. It just was a certainty. And that's how I kept going forward. And I don't know what I would have done if it never happened. But luckily, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Like Robin said, I started reading a bunch of books. I realized that this doctor is the wrong doctor for me. I switched doctors. I started taking a bunch of herbs. I read a bunch of books. I did a bunch of things. I started taking acupuncture. I took matters into my own hands. And after switching doctors and going through everything, like I took a 6-month break, I got pregnant on the second very lightly medicated IUI.
That's amazing. You didn't give up. You advocated for your care. You took breaks. What else did you do to support yourself?
After my last failed IVF attempt, I was finally getting to a place where I thought, I don't know if I can handle this if this fails again. I don't know if I can do this. And it failed. And I went into a depression that I didn't tell anybody about. And I kept to myself because that's how I am. I couldn't get out of bed. I was depressed. This is so corny, but it shocked me out of it. I had this dream that rainbow wings sprouted from my shoulder blades, like these rays of light sprouted from my shoulders. And I felt in the dream, in my sleep, I felt this wave of relief and not joy, but just like a breath. And when I woke up the next morning, I was better. I was able to get up and move about and start thinking forward and start thinking of future plans, which is where I came up with the new plan to get the books and take things and change doctors and all this stuff. But it took this weird dream I had with rainbow wings, and it was Pride Month. So then the next month, I saw rainbows everywhere, and it was just a reminder of my dream and my resilience and my strength. This sounds so corny, but that's how I got through it. That dream saved me.
Something that you said that just really resonated with me, Jaimie, is I feel like you have created the podcast that you were searching for when you were going through your struggles.
That's exactly it.
Out of nowhere, this little family developed. And like everybody who emails us, we're always like, oh my God, keep us posted. We're invested. And we are literally invested. I mean, we always joke around with our guests and we're like, invite us over for dinner. We mean it. We'll show up. And we really do mean it. Like we really would go over to everybody's house for dinner if we were really invited.
If they ever invited us. No, we've been invited a couple times, but
a couple times. I say this a lot. Trust your gut. Like listen to yourself and try not to get too wound up because ain't no baby being made when you're really stressed out. I don't think that Bogota was ever going to happen for me because the stakes were too high. If you can relax, if you can take care of yourself, if you can, and then listen to your gut. That's me.
I don't think I'd have my son if I hadn't trusted my gut and switched things up. But also know that while you're in the thick of it, while you're going through it, in the end, it's all going to be okay. In the end, you're going to have what you were meant to have, and you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay, and you will be happy with what you have.
I think you have the quote from John Lennon in your book, right? It's all going to be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
That's the quote that went through my head the entire time I had my infertility. It was that quote kept me going. And it's so true because it's okay now. I got there. It wasn't how I thought it was going to happen, but it's more than okay. It's beautiful.
Well, how can we find you when we want to learn more?
You can find us at If These Ovaries Could Talk anywhere you get your podcasts. We are there. We are all over the social media at Ovaries Talk. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and also YouTube, If These Ovaries Could Talk. And you can buy our book anywhere you can buy books.
We like to tell people that we are all the places that no one asked us to be. So
nobody ever asked us to be
nobody,
anywhere.
Literally, our live stream is called The Show That Nobody. It's called Ovaries Talking Live, the show that nobody asked for. But yeah, Jaimie, I bumped into a lesbian on the street today. She did not know who I was.
Every time I'm near any lesbians, I walk past one on the street or anything, I think in my head, I do not know.
And then you go, they're probably not baby people. She's a dog person.
Nobody knows us.
Nobody
It's
does.
so
Nobody
sweet.
does, Jaimie.
Nobody knows us, but we are so big in our own heads.
You are doing great. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I really was reminded of just how many different options there are for family building and how easy it can be to decide on one path to your goal, but that path might not be the way that actually gets you there, and how important it is to be nimble, to be patient, to advocate for your care, and along the way, find that community that will support you towards your goal. I'm your host, Dr. Lora Shahine, and this is Baby or Bust. If you like this episode, let us know. Give us a 5-star review and follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Baby or Bust is produced by Mark Ramsey, Jaimie Solis, and Greg Moga. Executive produced by Paul Anderson, Nick Panella, and Andrew Greenwood for Workhouse Media. Baby or Bust is a Mark Ramsey media production.